Welcome to the Grief Ladies, the practical guide to what comes next. I'm Kelly Daugherty.
And I'm Karyn Arnold, and we are two grief professionals with over 50 years of combined experience. We're here to validate, educate, and give you tangible tools you can actually use.
Each episode motivates you to take action and reminds you it's okay to want to feel better. This is the Grief Ladies, a guide to what comes next. Hello and welcome. I'm Kelly Daugherty and I'm here with my co-host Karyn Arnold, and we're super excited today for our guest. So we have Melissa Armstrong. She's a trauma-informed functional health practitioner, and she's going to be talking to us about the G in our grief framework, grounding. So we're going to go into practical strategies for grounding after a loss. So welcome, Melissa.
Thank you, Kelly and Karyn. I'm so excited to be here.
We are so excited to have you. So I'm just going to share a little bit of background information about Melissa. Melissa had a chaotic and traumatic childhood that was marked by parental addiction and abuse, surviving a school shooting at 15 and witnessing her brother's tragic death at 18. These unresolved traumas manifested into severe physical symptoms, leading her to explore alternative healing methods. Over more than 20 years, she transitioned from a career in nursing to becoming a trauma-informed functional health practitioner. Today, she empowers women and their families to heal their mind, body, and spirit with root-causing healing through the mind-body connection, somatic work, nervous system regulation, lab testing, lifestyle changes, and nutrition. She firmly believes that healing is always possible. Wow. Amazing. Perfect first guest for our grounding, I think. Covers everything we want to be able to talk about. So thanks, Melissa.
Yay.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and we had the benefit of talking a little bit even before we officially came on here. And Melissa, it sounds like your philosophy and ours align so well in terms of trying to create hope and possibility. And through us, it's really about actionable steps and trying to help people understand what they can do. Will you share with us all a little bit about what you had said with some of your experience and what that has looked like for you?
Yeah, I was sharing with you guys before we started that I really, in my own personal experience, and then also as a professional nurse for 10 years in traditional medicine, I feel like overwhelmingly I heard from my own doctors, and then kind of it's this pervasive like understanding is like when you have a diagnosis, like that's it. You have the diagnosis forever. There is no recovery. And I think that I believe that model is good for what it's good for. Acute illness, like I love that. Thank God for ICUs, ORs, ERs, all that. But I feel like as far as like empowerment and actually teaching people the tools to be well and overcome, I feel like that model really severely lacks that. So I was sharing with you my goal in sharing my story and being on other people's podcasts and having my own podcast and doing the work that I do. Like really the number one goal for me is to empower people to understand that healing is always possible. That's why it's the last line of my bio. That's why it's what I say on every podcast. It's always my final thought because healing is always possible, no matter the diagnosis, no matter the experience, your past, like what the doctor says, the pills you're on, like your current reality, healing is always possible.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
And I think we're both just so excited about that idea because we believe so strongly in that. So can you tell us a little bit about what trauma-informed functional health is and how that maybe would apply to somebody who's grieving?
Yeah. So I integrate all of my nursing knowledge, being a nurse for 15 years, and all of my personal experience going through severe trauma, as you read from my bio, from, birth until my brother's death at 18. And then obviously like other traumas that have happened since then, maybe not so catastrophic, but, I use all of that knowledge and the knowledge that I have through, the education I've done, in the last 7-8 years on like natural healing and what is somatic work, what does that even look like how can you help your body heal naturally and give it what it needs so you can actually recover from obviously my niche and what I'm, most well versed in is trauma recovery and anxiety, depression, panic, all the things that go along with that. So I really use like a root cause approach, helping people evaluate their lifestyle, their nutrition, their thought life, their internal dialogue, their self talk, their relationships and boundaries, and like so much else. And really functional is like the root cause. So like you have anxiety and you go to the doctor, they're going to say, you have anxiety. Here's anxiety medicine.
Mhm.
And that might help you feel better, in the acute. And sometimes we need that bridge. But like, why do you have anxiety? Is it because you have unprocessed trauma and grief that you're storing those emotions inside of your body? Is it because you have, poor self-talk? Is it because you're being exposed to toxins in your, at work or in your home or and really looking and identifying the root cause and then how to help your body heal from that naturally. And the trauma informed piece is obviously like my certification as a board certified holistic coach. And then I'm also a certified somatic therapist, meditation instructor, kind of lots of other random little things, but helping people actually like somatic. The root of that word means soma means body. So really helping people connect back to their body, that mind body connection.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. And it's not separate, it's one. And I think we tend to want to keep it separate, but it really is truly one. And
Mhm.
especially with grief, we do need to address that because so much, in my experience, even I'm going through a diverticulitis flare right now, and I was telling Karen about it before we got on, and I'm like, it was the anniversary of my mom's death the other day. I guarantee this flare right now is a result of my grief.
Oh
And
yeah.
so us being able to do the making sure that we're releasing the emotions from our body is so important when we're grieving.
So important.
Are you ready to take the next step on your grief journey with real tools and compassionate guidance? The Grief Ladies are launching a brand new workshop series based on their signature grief GRIEF framework. 5 trail markers to help you find your footing after your loss: grounding, rebuilding, interacting, evolving, and finding. Each workshop focuses on one trail marker, guiding you through practical steps to move from surviving to living again, all in a space that's honest, supportive, and real. Led by grief experts Kelly Daugherty and Karyn Arnold, these workshops combine decades of experience with tools you can start using today. Visit griefladies.com to explore the upcoming workshops because you don't have to climb this mountain alone.
Yeah.
Oh,
Well, and the one thing I talk to people about a lot, and the reason why we make grounding the first part of this framework is because if your body is not functioning in its optimal way, if your physical health, your sleep, your eating, the movement, if those things are not where they can be, or if we're not focusing on those, then it's going to be very difficult to be feeling okay elsewhere.
Mm,
If I'm not, I say to people all the time, like bad nights mean bad days. If you're not sleeping well at night, how are you going to be able to have the energy to get through? If we're not paying attention to ourselves and nourishing ourselves, in ways with the way we eat and trying to recognize that as a good source of energy, which is so needed for the grieving people who are exhausted. So,
mhm.
I think we like it because it also feels like some of the things that and all the stuff that I don't have any control over, maybe this is some of the place that I can put that energy into and see some results back. What would you
Yeah.
say to that, Melissa? How would that
Oh yeah.
impact people?
Yeah, I could not agree more. I take it, I think, even a step further, and I tell people like, nervous system regulation, in my experience, personally and professionally, nervous system regulation and sleep are the number one like first and foremost.
Yeah.
We have to get you sleeping and we have to get you regulating your nervous system and feeling like not so chaotic just in your mind and in your, psyche, before we can even address like the actual like symptom management and the nutrition piece and all of the other like physical well-being pieces. The nervous system, in my opinion, is the most important system in the body. Your brain and your spinal cord is the central nervous system. literally controls everything. Like it controls everything. So if your computer is not working properly, like how are you supposed to run programs? How are
Mm.
you supposed to type up your paper? How are you supposed to play a game? How are you supposed to do anything on your computer if it's not operating correctly? You have to get the computer operating correctly.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a good analogy. And that idea of sleep, I say to people all the time, it's not optional. We have to stop treating it like, well, maybe I get a good night's sleep, maybe I don't. Like making it, a really, I think, important goal for people.
Oh,
And I think we'll
100%.
talk to you a little bit maybe about some tips with that. But when someone is in deep grief or just trying to get through the day, I think sometimes these things feel like an afterthought. I think for some people it's kind of like, well, who cares what I'm eating? And this just happened. Like my physical well-being, I don't think people always make that connection. So how do we help people understand that better?
Yeah. I think that that lack of understanding is really a function of our like we've kind of been taught that they don't really have anything to do with each other.
Yeah.
Like we've been taught that if you go, we've been trained to look for the quick fix, and that you go to your cardiologist for your heart, and you go to your gastroenterologist for your gut, and you go to your therapist for your mind, and you have all these like different subspecialties, and I feel like that's like one of the biggest scams of our lifetime is like
Hmm.
that doctors are actually like so like subspecialties, like they're not actually like well versed in all the whole body, which again, like my caveat is like thank God for ICUs, ORs, ERs. Like I fully believe in that, those things, and thank God we have them. But really like the you can the body is all of these different pieces that all move together. It
Hmm.
just is. Like it's impossible to separate them. It all works together. That's why you can have a thought and have, diverticulitis flare, or, where if your toe hurts and you have thoughts about the toe pain, like they're connected. Um I heard an analogy recently and I thought it was so fabulous. I'll use it now that that kind of like gut feeling, everybody has those gut feelings, right? Like something like you have the first kiss from your spouse, or you have like an exciting job interview that you're so excited about, right? Like we've all felt that like butterfly in our stomach, like this is so exciting, I can't wait for this experience. We've also felt deep, like pit of your stomach, like grief and sadness, like the death of a loved one, or something, all of a sudden you're looking around at the park and, oh my gosh, where's my kid? And you have that split second where you're like, your stomach falls out, right? We've all felt that before. That's not a physical thing that's happening inside of your stomach. It's coming from your mind.
Yeah.
There's a thought. So like when people say like, oh, it's all in your mind, like it's kind of like, I mean, it is like not in a negative way, like it is in your mind. It's not that you're making it up, but that it's like coming from your mind. You have thoughts and feelings about all of your circumstances, and those thoughts and feelings will create physical symptoms if you don't address those thoughts and feelings. If those thoughts and feelings are negative, that's a toxin to your body.
Mm.
And you will have physical symptoms when you are exposed to toxins, whether it's physical, chemical, or emotional.
Yeah. And so, Melissa, what do you see with your clients that are experiencing deep grief? What do some of those symptoms and those physical pains look like?
People come to me most commonly with exhaustion, like
Mm.
chronic fatigue. Like I just cannot. That's one of the most common things I hear is chronic fatigue. Cannot get myself to do stuff. I can sleep all day. I'm getting 8, 9, 10 hours of sleep, and I'm still exhausted when I wake up. Um, and the mental emotional stuff. So like anxiety, depression, panic, irritability with kids and family. And then I have, a good percentage of people come to me with random physical symptoms. Like their primary concern is their digestive issues or their migraines or their joint pain. I see a lot of digestive issues and I see a lot of skin issues like rashes, acne, that
Yes.
kind of stuff.
Yeah, I had a client, she woke up on it was her son's birthday. It was the first birthday since he had died, and she woke up in a full body rash.
Mhm.
Oh,
And I was like,
Yeah.
"Oh, wow." Like, talk
Yep.
about, like, grief manifesting, right?
Yep. I used to have the same thing. I used to like wake up like covered in hives. And when I would go and I didn't understand where it was coming from at first, and I would go to the doctor and they would give me steroids. We don't know where
Mhm.
it's coming from. They're like, you must be exposed to something. Like, do you have new laundry detergent? Like, no,
Yep.
I don't. And
Yeah.
I would take steroids and it would go away and then it would come back.
The other symptom that I see a ton is I think every one of my clients has, TMJ or jaw pain or
Mm,
something,
yeah.
grinding or clenching or
Yep.
yeah. Yeah,
so
it's interesting. And people are not necessarily, always making those connections and probably not necessarily even getting a lot of reinforcement from their doctors, and that's
Oh, yeah.
what's troubling, I think, sometimes about the traditional medicine and not even grief related. But I remember going to my dermatologist one time having an issue. And I said, well, what if I like changed my diet? Like, what if I was like, watching my gluten or my dairy? And they looked at me, they're like, what would that have to do with anything? I'm like, really? Like it's just crazy to me. So, you do see that in so many different ways. I think there are a lot of myths and misunderstandings. Is there any, Melissa, that you've come across through your work, that people seem to hold on to or are challenged by as they're trying to make this transition to a new way of thinking?
I think that's the most common one if that I see is that people say to me all the time, clients, people who I'm on podcasts sharing things and I hear from, people sharing things on my social media and people will message me and be like, "Oh my gosh, I had no idea that I had never considered the fact that like what I've been through in my past is actually impacting my current like reality or physical well-being or circumstances right now." Like, oh my gosh. And that is like the biggest misconception again, because our body is one system. It is one very complex, multifaceted, system that is affected by so much. And every single piece of it is important and no piece of it can possibly be completely separated from another piece.
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely.
Looking for a grief community that actually feels supportive, not overwhelming? We built one. The Grief Ladies community on Facebook is a private, free space where you can connect with others who are navigating life after someone they love has died. Inside, you'll find weekly prompts, practical tools, conversations that feel real, not sugar-coated, and a place where your person is honored. If you want steady support and a community that understands what your days look like right now, come join us. Search the Grief Ladies community on Facebook or tap the link in our bio.
I love it. This is all such like I know Karen and I both believe this, and it's just so important. And I'm so glad that you're able to share this with our listeners, and hopefully they can see more of that connection of what they're going through and how much it is. Grief is really hard on the body, and we need to make sure that we're taking care of ourselves. So, Melissa, as I read in your bio, your brother died when you were 18, and so can I ask what your brother's name was?
Justin.
Justin, thank you.
Mhm.
Thank you for sharing that. Would you like to share a little bit about what your grief journey following the death of Justin looked like for you?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, it was not pretty. Not pretty at all. I came from, as you read from my bio, like my entire childhood was marked by trauma. My parents were, addicted to drugs. My dad was very physically abusive to my brother and my mom. As a result, my mom was very verbally abusive to myself and my other, younger siblings. And when my they divorced when I was 6. My dad left and never came back. And then the next, several years were just marked by my mom's inability to parent us well because of her own trauma and all of the things that had gone back, at least 5 generations that I'm aware of. And it's just intergenerational. And that's how trauma, is passed down from generation to generation. And she didn't know how to cope and process her own grief and trauma, which made her show up the way she showed up, which just traumatized us. And then when the shooting happened when I was 15, that's like I was in a really dark place after that happened. And I feel like I was maybe just kind of starting to come out of that fog. I was diagnosed with complex post-traumatic stress after that happened, and had been, going to therapy, just kind of traditional talk therapy, and felt like I was, you know, um, improving some, but not, a ton, but I felt like I could actually like function again. I started going back to school. I was in college, and then my brother died, and I completely went off the deep end. I had so much unprocessed grief and trauma still already, even though I had been in just traditional talk therapy. I had still so much like stored emotion inside of my body. And, my brother dying is one thing. Witnessing his death, like being there with him, was like exponentially, I think, like unfathomable pain. And, I was all the things. I was suicidal. I was in and out of psychiatric inpatient stays. I was using drugs and alcohol to cope. I was panic. The panic for me looking back was like the worst symptom, the most pervasive and difficult to manage symptom. I couldn't even like go to the grocery store, you know. I was so unwell for many years. And I lived there until my early 20s. When I was 23 or 24, so it had been 5 years since my brother died, I was very emotionally volatile. I had moments of like clarity, and was able to. I was actually in those years I was pursuing my nursing degree. I decided when my brother died I was going to become a nurse because I wanted to help people like the nurses helped him. And um somehow I was able to kind of compartmentalize all of the pain that I had like on a day-to-day basis. And I was able to like exceed, do quite well in nursing school, and, got into a very competitive program and passed with like straight A's and did all of the requirements that I needed to do for school. But outside of school, I like didn't function. I couldn't work. I couldn't go to the grocery store. I had panic. I had horrible anxiety. I was on 7 different prescription medications when I was 23, told that I would be on them forever. And I used to have like frequent panic attacks. And when my now husband, then boyfriend, suggested to me that I should, like, maybe he's, in construction, he had no idea what he was saying. He didn't know. He just reflected back to me, like, you seem like you're kind of like always like, if you could just not be so tight and tense all the time, like maybe you would feel better and you wouldn't have this panic, And I was like, well, how do I do that? He's like, I don't know, like meditation. Have you ever thought about meditation maybe? And he didn't meditate. He really had no idea, he's just trying to help me, and he loved me. So he wanted to help. And that was a turning point for me. That meditation now is not actually one of the first things I suggest to people, because it's actually quite difficult to meditate. And that's what I hear from people a lot. It's like, how do I just sit still and like not think? It's like, it's a practice, and it comes with practice. But for some reason, I think there was some divine intervention. I was able to actually like benefit from that. And I saw a change in my mental health and my physical health quite quickly when I just was able to like calm my mind and my body down a little bit. I had never felt that in 24 years. I'd never experienced that ever. Because I always lived in my sympathetic nervous system coming from what I had come from, and it's no wonder it makes sense.
Yeah,
Like
sure.
that I was,
Absolutely.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's,
Yeah. Well, so Melissa, when you say healing is possible, it really, you've like walked the walk, and I mean, I think that means a lot to people that, hearing from someone who's actually gone through so much and here you've been able to, you know, make something of that and turn it into something else. So I'm curious, if you said meditation's not the first thing that you suggest to people, what would be the first thing that you would suggest as like a practical step for a person?
yeah, breathing,
Okay.
just breathing. I think we so underestimate the power of our breath. And that is quite literally the first thing I recommend to people 99.9% of the time, because when we live in this, like trauma is not the event. Trauma is what happens inside of your body as a result of the event. And when we have these events that are highly emotional and we feel like we're going through them alone, that's the landscape in which trauma is created. That's where it exists. When we have these highly emotional situations, that emotion is energy and it actually stays inside of our body if we don't allow it to process out. When we have those and that energy in motion, those emotions stuck inside of our body, we develop these trauma responses, and then our nervous system tends to stay in that sympathetic nervous system, which for some people is fight or flight, for some people it's freeze, for some people it's fawn. That's kind of an complex topic in it of itself. But when we're in that sympathetic nervous system, we breathe more shallow and more quickly. And when you're doing that, when you're breathing that fast, you can't think clearly and you feel like anxiety. For me, anxiety shows up as like kind of a physical, like I imagine a like actually electricity or like an atom kind of just like moving around really fast inside of my body. Like that's what it feels like inside of my body. More in my abdomen, but I can feel it like elsewhere too when I have anxiety. That's how I show up. And that's usually like the indicator to me, like, oh, if I just like breathe right now, that physical sensation actually lessens and a lot of times goes away completely, because but so many people are like in that state and they're breathing fast and shallow and they don't actually notice that they kind of feel awful.
Mm.
um so just like, and it doesn't have to be this like big 30-minute like sit down cross-legged closing your eyes, not thinking, nothing like that. Like literally 30 to 60 seconds, like 3 times a day. This is my first tip for everyone, is like, can you set an alarm on your phone, like 8, 12, and 5, or morning, noon, and night, that just says, like, we all have our phone with us like all the time, right? It's like glued to our side. So like put an alarm in your phone, morning, noon, and night, no excuses, that just says breathe. And when that alarm goes off, no matter what you're doing, stop and just breathe, become aware of your breath and just breathe. Try to take some like 3 to 5 deep breaths over like 30 seconds and message me and tell me how your life is transformed.
Yeah.
Yes, yes. And what I always say, you have your breath with you wherever you are. So you don't have to worry about some music you want to listen to or some technique you always have that breath with you.
Yes.
That's awesome advice. Thank you. And so, Melissa, we're gonna go into our other segment, which is celebrate their life. And so, one of my goals is to help people be able to shift from focusing on the death to remembering their loved one's life,
Yeah.
and to be able to celebrate and honor those things, the memories, the love, the connection that we have. It's still possible, even in death, to keep that connection. So,
Yeah.
I'm curious, how do you personally honor? Obviously, I'm assuming your work is a big part of it, but how
Yeah.
else do you honor Justin?
Yeah, I think like my everyday is honoring him. Like um uh I'm a Christian, so like the Bible helps me, and like the teachings of the Bible help me quite a bit. And Romans 8:28 says that God works all things for the good of those who love him. And that's been a really powerful like anchoring scripture for me. And that I feel like that's how um I honor Justin, is like remembering that when he died, like obviously it was the worst moment of my life, right? And it still hurts. And the 21st anniversary of his death was 2 days ago. So like the grief is still there. I'm still like holding that grief, but also I have so much joy and purpose and happiness. I hold them both at the same time, and both are true at the same time. And I think every single day that I continue to um, reach for healing and show up for myself and show up in my business and be on podcasts like, with awesome people like you guys, and just sharing my own story and his story is honoring him. Like, I think that I am in real time living out my calling on earth. Like, this is my assignment. And I think that alone, just living that out, is honoring him.
That's beautiful, Melissa. Thank you for sharing that. And what a way to honor Justin and the work you're doing. And I just have to mention, because I don't believe there's coincidences. And I seem to have a lot of dates with people. It's just aligns up the way it does. Birthdays, anniversaries, and my mom's anniversary of her death was 2 days ago, and it was 31 years.
Oh my gosh.
So
Well, that is not a coincidence. Yeah.
So I think we were meant to be
Wow.
doing this together this week.
That is
So,
so powerful. Wow.
mhm,
Thank you for sharing that.
yeah.
Wow. So cool.
Yeah. That's pretty amazing. And I think that's, what we try to do. And as we kind of move through some of the different parts of the framework, starting with the basics, but then eventually reaching that point that I think most people do, where do I go from here? And everybody is going to answer that a little bit of a different way. But again, I think that kind of putting things into action and really committing ourselves to getting ourselves to work through some healing so that we can be in a better place to be honoring them, is what we can try to do. I think sometimes we feel like if we hold on to the grief tighter, there's more love and more loyalty
Yeah.
in that. But I find that we are able to stay more connected when we are participating and feeling purposeful and having the energy, to be able to do that. So it's something really important for people to remember too. And I think it sounds like something you're doing really beautifully, Melissa, for sure.
Thank you.
Yeah, I really do. So, Kelly, anything else that you were thinking of for today?
No, so for those listeners that have been listening to us for the past few episodes, we have been asking you to make some observations about different levels of our framework here, about just observing your food, your sleep, your movement, all of these things, and just jotting down some notes and things. But now we're into the action stage. Now we're into giving you the practical steps, and I think Melissa sums it up perfectly. It is your breath,
Mm.
starting with your breath, setting that phone, that timer. I used to have a bracelet that would buzz once an hour just to kind of remind me to take that deep breath. And so that breath is so powerful. And so really try to, this is your homework assignment. We are going to say is to, take those deep breaths, making sure you're breathing down into that belly, thinking about the way a baby breathes and trying to replicate that, not just all up here in our chest, right? And so, as Melissa so wonderfully talked about that and how important that is. So that is your action step for the week, is to focus on your breath.
Yeah. I love that. I love that. So, Melissa, I mean, I can't tell you how grateful we are to have had you here today. Frankly, I don't know how Kelly feels, but already I'm like, all right, we can have you back for this. We can have, I mean, it feels like there's just so much that we could, I think anytime you find like minded people, you're like, I just want to keep talking. Like, that's kind of how Kelly and I got connected in the first place, actually. So, we would definitely love to have you back again. But I'm sure the things that you are talking about have really resonated with people today. So, if anybody wanted to reach you, to learn a little bit more, to work with you, to hear your podcast or the other things that you're doing, what would be the best way to do that?
Yeah, my brand is Holistic Health by Melissa. like across the board. That's my Facebook, my Instagram, my website, my podcast, holistichealthbymelissa.com. I offer lots of free workshops, master classes, like free PDFs, tons of content on my podcast, on my social media pages. Follow me wherever, reach out whenever. I'd love to hear your story. I am always, here for people and supporting people and empowering people to take back their life and live out, the calling on their life too.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And just to keep spreading that word that healing is always possible, and
Absolutely.
how much we love that. So, Melissa, again, thank you. Kelly, thank you. Thank you to everybody for being here. We'll continue with our grief framework and be talking about the things that you can do, the action steps, the things that are going to make a difference. So remember to subscribe and keep tuning in, and hopefully we'll get to see y'all again. So thank you, Melissa. Thank you, Kelly.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for joining us on The Grief Ladies. Don't wait to feel better to get started. Getting started is what makes you feel better. Put this week's tool to work. If today's episode helped, share it with someone who needs it and leave us a review. We'd love to hear from you. And remember, we're here for you, your trusted grief ladies, navigating this path together.